Shall we talk about health communication programs? So, we've been talking about frameworks for specific issues, so drug misuse and environmental health issues. This is actually a framework for a specific method, and that method is health communication. So, you may be thinking, well, hold on, how is that different? So, health communication programs are specific types of um, they have specific uses. So they use certain communication channels in order to change like KSAs and outcomes to influence people to improve their health. So when I talk about using these communication channels, so think about things like um, television, radio, ads that pop up when you're listening to Spotify or Pandora, um, ads, Facebook ads, social media in general. So not just ads, but like things that people post on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, sources on the internet. It even includes print media. So think about, newspapers, for example, brochures, flyers. It includes posters. This includes billboards. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about communication channels. So these are specifically, it's in a sense, it's really sort of health marketing to a certain extent. And also, I don't remember if I included like things on the internet. So, internet educational campaigns, that is part of health communication as well. So there is a really good book, kind of like the gold standard for, or I guess I would say it's the classic book on health communication that was put together by the National Cancer Institute. It's been a while ago. It's probably been maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And that is actually that textbook. I don't wanna call it a textbook, it's like a thick manual, and by thick, I'm holding up my fingers, which you can't see, but it's maybe, a quarter of an inch to a third of an inch thick. And, I have put that in your folder for chapter 12 in case you are interested in looking at that or owning that. While that is actually called, I don't even know what that's called. I think it's just called Making Health Communication Programs Work or Making Health Communication Work or something like that. Because when it was published with this bright pink cover on it, people just call it the pink book. So if you're ever in a public health setting and somebody talks about the pink book, that is what they're talking about is this Making Health Communication Programs workbook that is in your chapter 12 folder. So if you want to go check that out, it's still pink. So you can see it, it kind of glows. Anyhow, okay, there are 4 stages of this process, and here is a graphic that kind of, that's used to kind of explain what those 4 stages are, and we'll talk about these. Um, again, you're sort of seeing a pie, which is kind of ironic because this is round, right? So you've got this planning and strategy development. It sort of needs assessment, a little bit. So this assessing piece happens in one and two. The planning piece happens in one and two. Your implementation happens in step three, and then your program evaluation or your campaign evaluation. Oftentimes, health communication programs are called campaigns, and you'll hear me use both of those terms kind of back and forth. All right. So let's talk about these. So the first stage one, this is developing your plan and strategy. So first you need to assess the health problem. So, kind of your needs assessment. So what is the health problem? What needs to change? Defining your communication objectives. So this is where you're thinking about like what do we want to do with this program? So what are our objectives that we want to achieve through this program? So it's kind of interesting because it happens a little earlier, I think, than we're used to in a planning model where you're developing objectives kind of off the bat. Um, a key piece to health communication um, programs is to define your intended audience. So this step or stage one, step three, this is really pinpointing who is your audience. You are, health communication campaigns are typically not really broad. They tend to have a very specific population that they are targeting. If you try to be too broad, you sort of lose the message and it doesn't appeal to anyone. So you use something called segmentation, so audience segmentation. So think about like what specific set of people, and usually it's some sort of like demographic segmentation where you might be like, okay, we're looking at Midwest parents of first time parents who are um, living in the metro east area, so you could actually get that specific with it. And the more sort of specific you get, there's a balance there, right? So there's like the more specific you get, um, you it will appeal to them, but you don't want to get so specific that you're programming for a tiny amount of people. So your textbook gives some other characteristics that you can use for segmenting. Could be like based on behavior, smokers, not smokers. Could be culture. So it could be you could be talking about like our example of Bangladeshi Americans. That is definitely a culture you could segment to that. And there are several others that you can read through on your own. So define that. And then you need to explore how to best reach your intended audience. You would not like think about your own family. If you have older relatives, is the best setting or communication channel to communicate with them, is it TikTok? Is it Instagram? It's probably not, right? Like it could be like radio. Maybe you have older relatives that still read print media. Um, Maybe they still watch like broadcast TV that has commercials in it. So we would know like that is a place that you could reach, and they go to the doctor's office. So maybe you can, put um, posters and stuff up. If you're looking at sort of urban settings, you can think about like putting information on mass transit. So, if you're in Chicago, if you're riding the L, you can see there are like ads and things. At least last time I rode the L, there were ads there. So you think about those things for your intended audience. You also need to be thinking about your possible program partners. So who is going to pair with you or group with you? Um, is there do they have certain expertise? Do they have access to a certain population? It is important to have people who do have some training in health communication, health marketing specifically, to help plan and strategize. So consider bringing them on as program partners, or if you need to, you can hire a consultant. Then you develop your strategy. What's your evaluation plan and your timeline? So that's a big chunk right there, isn't it? So we kind of got the framework in place. Now the next step, the stage 2, this is when we have to actually work on the the meat of the campaign. Like what exactly are we going to be saying in this campaign? What are we going to be showing? Um, what sort of messages? So look at what's out there already. So review existing materials, because depending on your budget, it can be super expensive to create new materials. So if there are materials, and the federal government actually does a pretty good job with some social marketing campaigns or some health communication campaigns, and they make those materials freely available. And we'll be looking at some examples of that. So look to see what's out there. Will it work for your population? That's awesome. And oftentimes they're in multiple languages as well. So go look, don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. So let's say you haven't really found anything and you need to develop your own. Then you need to develop and test your message concepts. So what exactly, what is the give a couple of options on how you could communicate the information to your segmented target population. Start to think about what materials do you want? Like, what's it supposed to be? Are you doing, knowledge, skills, attitudes, beliefs? What sort of budget do you have? Are you talking about something kind of, like a sensitive topic? And that may determine what sorts of materials that you're developing. So you develop your messages and materials, and you want your target audience. You want to be assessing, the accuracy of it, of your messages in your materials? How consistent are they with each other? Like, are you telling the same story sort of over and over again? I know that sounds funny, but remember how we talked about repetition and how important that is. You should have several messages that you are putting out there, but you're putting out there saying it in different ways. So that's the consistency of those, maybe three messages that you're sending out there. Are they clear? What's the readability level of them? Like what language level? What language are they in? Are they relevant for your target population? Um, yeah, is there credibility? So, potentially you can pair with a credible organization that maybe has a little, American Cancer Society, American Heart Association. They have sort of automatic credibility. And then appeal. How appealing are they? Are they high quality? Do they draw the eye? If they're not done well, there's sort of a weird wraparound. Like sometimes if you have sort of old school, it's come back in style and will appeal to certain people. But for the most part, you really need to kind of keep those high quality, current, and professionally done. Um, then you need to, let's go back. Then you need to plan for production. So, how are you going to get these materials to people? Are you going to physically print things and send them out? Are you going to make them available on websites? Exactly how is that going to go? And don't forget that you need to pre-test those messages and materials. Like, don't start churning things out until you've done some focus groups, some questionnaires. Really, you don't want to produce a whole lot of something that you haven't tested it in front of your target audience and made some adjustments to. Then you implement the program. Typically, for health communication programs or campaigns, there is some sort of a launch. So, like a special day or a special event, news people, you kind of do like a blast almost. Holding a press conference is super important. It's a way to sort of just share with journalists and reporters what's happening. And there are specific ways to create a press release. So looking at how to write those, I don't think your textbook has um, information on how to write a press release, but I know that you can find those on some of the like public health websites. I think CDC might have some. Making sure that you're getting in contact with media. Just, who do you need to contact to reach your target population and to kind of make this big announcement? How are you going to manage your implementation? So, monitoring any problems that arise, doing your process evaluations, revising things if you need to, and then maintaining your good relationships with partners and keeping them involved. That's an important part of implementing because health communication campaigns can be longish, right? I mean, they can go on for years. So you think about the red dress campaign, that's the breast cancer campaign. So, like red ribbon or red dress, that has been going on, oh my goodness, at least 10 years, probably longer than that, maybe 15. So, how do you maintain those partnerships in that long run? Then finally, you've got the E part of a pie, right? Is where you're going to evaluate effectiveness. So at that point, you want to review and revise your outcome evaluation plan. So you develop this in stage one. So let's look at it. Like, what were the objectives that you listed? Is change happening? Are they, conducting that outcome evaluation to see, did you achieve the goals, the changes in KSAs, potentially the changes in behavior, maybe the changes in some of those like outcomes, like, like where we're looking at maybe actually are reducing breast cancer deaths, or you're increasing early detection, something like that. And then finally, you've got stage four, the last is refining the program. Again, we talked about that these things can kind of keep going on and on. So it's important to refine that as you go and just make sure you're still targeting it. So that's health communication very briefly. Again, you have a whole book in your folder that if you are interested in doing this or you ever have a chance to do this in your professional life, you will know more about.